Welcome you to Porch Talk. This is your host, Alan, and tonight is a podcast to podcast. I have a professional voice actor here with me. He's in the Columbus, Mississippi area. Cultured Bumpkin, Jake Phillips. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, Alan. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. You're in the upcoming play.
I am. There's one in Starkville called Alabama Story, so I'm in that one. So I sh had to shave, look like a little baby over here. Yeah, I don't like
That's
being shaved. When I left the army, I
that's
said I'm never doing it again, but oh well, I lied.
that's great, man. I have a horror story from the last time that I acted.
Really?
Tore my ACL.
Really? Like
Yeah.
during a performance?
No, dude, it was like two or three rehearsals before the big night.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was actually making my turn to go to the fight scene that I was supposed to win. Right when I made my turn, my knee popped and I just hit the deck.
Oh,
And the director's like, Alan, you're supposed to win. And I was like, I was hitting the deck, man. I was like, something ain't right. Something ain't right.
oh no.
Freakish accident. I was like, I remember when I went to go get the MRI done, and the nurse she came in to break the news. She's like, "So you tore your ACL? How'd you do it?" I said, "You're gonna need to help me make a story. This is not cool at all."
Dang it.
I told her, I was like, I tore it of acting at a rehearsal for a play, and she's like, "Yeah, you're gonna need to work on that."
So did they cancel the play or like what happened?
It just so happened that COVID hit right on time and we never did get to perform the play.
Okay. Well, that's unfortunate in its own way, but also, I don't know, a blessing in disguise. If
Yeah, because we had rewrote the script, dude. I was gonna put off surgery till after, so I was gonna be on crutches, and so we reworked the whole play so that I would be on crutches.
okay,
And like we were doing a whole lot of work around, and then like the director broke is like, look, they're not gonna let us do it. They're not letting anybody in the theater, period. And I was like, well, that's actually kind of a relief. I just spent the past 3 months memorizing this, but
right.
it is what it is.
How about that? Well, now
Yeah,
would
man.
that have been at the at
Dom Nova,
Rosenwald? What's that?
Dom Nova at the Columbus Art Center.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So man, like, are you originally from the Golden Triangle area?
Yeah, from Tibby.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, kind of out a little south of West Point, out in the swamp.
Oh yeah, well aware of Tibby, man. We got a lot of friends out that way. Uh, I knew some Kinders, Sheila.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, good people. But man, tell me a little bit. I was digging into your bio for Cultured Bumpkin, and so professional voice actor, and this was brought upon early days and memories of your father reading to you at night, huh?
That's right. Yeah. So, I the Cultured Bumpkin, that's my podcast and my YouTube channel, and like on TikTok. Um, and it's just kind of me reading or giving a take on something from classic literature. So it might be like a read of a poem or whatever, or maybe a Shakespeare monologue, except with a real Southern accent. You know what I mean? To be or
Hmm.
not to be, that's the question. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Uh, but just a way to, it's all literature themed. But I developed that love because my dad was a absolute meathead of an athlete, is what he called himself. He passed in 2013. Um, but he would say he was a meathead, didn't care about the arts or anything, and he did not want me to grow up that way. And so he wanted me to grow up appreciating poetry and not being embarrassed of being emotional at a great symphony or a piece of art. Like that's okay. It's supposed to do that to you. No, that's fine. Don't push that down. And I'm so thankful for that. And so yeah, he's the one that got me going, but I really didn't do anything with it till I was, an adult, and kind of said, you know what, I need to do that for my kids, because about the time he died, my daughter was born, and I said I want to get an early start on this for her. So I kind of started the YouTube channel so that she could have, a little catalog of dad reading whatever if something happens to me. When something happens to me, we're all gonna go one of these days.
And for those of you watching or listening, I'll have his channel linked in the description. Go check it out, subscribe. We'll plug it again at the end, but if during your workday, if you needed content, whether it's a short or a video, Jake has you covered. I mean, you put out a lot of content.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I love, I started as a podcast and then later kind of a video as well. So I kind of have both, but I started the podcast that I couldn't find. That doesn't mean they're not out there. I just I hadn't found it. And that is, I love Mark Twain stories or O. Henry. That's some of the greatest short story writing available, and yet it's hard to find on YouTube or a podcast. So I said, I'm just going to start doing it. So I'll do the stories, and then sometimes I'll put them into compilations of, like 2 hours or something. And that way, if you like classic literature, you could sort of listen to several, Edgar Allan Poe creepy stories for 2 hours or whatever while you drive or whatever. So
Mhm.
a little bit of everything of varying lengths for anybody that appreciates literature.
It's kind of the same story with Porch Talk here. Like when it started, and of course the show has evolved over time, but it was like when I was getting in the podcast, the conversations that we were having on porches and the music that we were sharing, uh, I just couldn't find anybody else doing anything quite like that. And I was like, well, we got it. We'll just bring it to the table.
That's right.
And I mean, and to your point, to just talking about the arts here in the Golden Triangle or even a little bit beyond, I'm just from across the state line in Alabama
Yeah.
in Lamar County. And growing up, I mean, if you were a boy, or especially up to your formative years, up to leaving high school, you played sports. That's what you did. And man, I played baseball up in time I was 15, and that's when I got a guitar. And now I got drums, I got banjos, I got basses, and I mean the whole thing kind of transformed for me. And so like I see exactly what your father meant when he told you that is I remember moving down to Mobile and like I had never been around that many people who were into the arts in all different walks of life. And I was like, okay, there wasn't that many of me around. Now I'm surrounded by it. And I, kind of got into it.
Right. That's awesome. And I think that's always a good thing. And Mississippi and you know, anywhere in the South, I mean, there's so much culture that nobody ever talks about. They talk about the hillbillies and stuff, and we got plenty of
Hmm.
them too, but like, you know, nobody really pays homage to the fact that, man, there's some artistic people. I mean, Columbus is the hometown of Tennessee Williams.
Yeah.
Some great talents come out of the South.
Yeah. Man, we have great actors, playwrights, authors, musicians. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Yep.
It was so funny. And I rarely go through the comments, but someone had commented on a video of mine, and uh, I was talking about the country as a whole and how I kind of was feeling like I couldn't really understand what was going on in mass with everything going on. And the guy found out that I lived in Mississippi, and he was like, "Well, no wonder you don't understand. You're from Mississippi. You're practically last in everything and probably obese." And I was like, "Well, that's fair to say, I guess. I mean, statistics are statistics, but we're also number one in a few things, such as the arts. I mean, look at everything that we brought you. Do you like music?
Yep.
We had the blues. I
That's right.
mean, we got Elvis. What you got against that guy?
Yeah. Yeah. BB King, you know, Jim Henson and the Muppets, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
so much art. Um, and yeah, the author, I really like Harrison Scott Key. And he came to Columbus not too long ago, did a book signing. I've had him on my podcast before. And he said something to the effect of, to understand a place like the South, you need to understand Mississippi. And then and he does that so well in especially his first book, The World's Fattest Man or something like that. And yeah, there's so much going on in the South, and just
Hmm.
because you look at a few statistics doesn't mean you know very much about it.
Yeah, I mean, like in the comment, you were calling me fat and ignorant, but at the same time, I was like, you're showing just how ignorant you are on the subject. But I mean,
Yeah,
like you're you're not looking at the whole picture. And but yeah, to that quote, I heard it at the Blue Front Cafe. I want to say the guy was either from Britain or it may have been Japan, but that's where Jimmy Duck Holmes is, and they throw two music festivals a year. One to pay homage to the Blue Front Cafe as an anniversary. That happens in September. And then the other one is just to celebrate the blues and the Bentonia style of it. And so you'll have people from all over the world come to Mississippi. And a foreigner told me I wonder if he read his book and got that quote because he said that if you wanted to understand the world, you first have to go to Mississippi.
interesting. That's kind of profound.
Yeah, I thought it was too.
I mean, and yeah. And,
And go ahead. I'm sorry.
well, I was going to say, growing up, um, being from Mississippi and just my sort of close proximity to Mississippi State, and also my dad, I've already mentioned how he was, he had an upbringing and he wanted me to have a different one than he did in some ways. And so we lived so close to Mississippi State University. He was always meeting people from, you know, all around the world and saying, "Hey, come over for dinner." And we would have them over for dinner, show them good Mississippi hospitality. And then, after dinner, let's have a cup of coffee. Tell us about where you're from. Hey, hey, Jacob, get if he's from, Nepal, hey, get the encyclopedia. We'd open it up. We had this big set of encyclopedias. All right, here, should talk us through it. And then the family would gather around, and this person's face, and this happened with over 50 people, 50 countries. We had like lots of Chinese people, lots of Malaysians. So this happened a lot, but 50 countries, different countries by the time I left the house. But right here in the swamp in Mississippi, I hear about, the Himalayan mountains and, the, the, the Nepal, the Gurkha regiment that fights for the crown and
Hmm.
what bad dudes those are and all this stuff right here in Mississippi. And, that could happen at any college, I suppose, but for me, it happened in Mississippi. And that's where I got a lot of enrichment culturally was right here in the swamp.
I mean, I can relate to that story. I remember my grandmother, she was the one that showed me Lord of the Rings. And
Oh, nice.
she showed me the film first. She showed me do you remember the late 80s animation for The Hobbit?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We watched that together and then we would watch The Fellowship of the Ring. And then she bought me a copy of the book and she's like, now go read it. And just being immersed in that world, and also like to your point with Mark Twain, I'm a huge fan as well. It's a little less family, and it almost feels like that story is being told from something that I know that I've
Mm-hmm.
experienced. And we had foreign exchange students in high school a lot, South Korea, China, a lot like Germany, what you're
Yeah.
talking about, and it was that same experience. We would have them over to the house and feed them and show them Southern hospitality, and that very much the same thing. Now, tell me a little bit about your part of the world, and it was like not only was I reading about fantasy and these great stories in books, but hearing these stories about these mountain ranges that I may or may not ever be able to lay eyes on.
Right.
It's it's
I think
captivating.
that's wonderful. And I don't think there's anybody alive that when a stranger, especially in the land that you're visiting, like a native of the land you're visiting, who's a perfect stranger to you, says, "Hey, tell me about where you're from. What do you like? Oh, that's cool. Can you tell me about?" Man, everybody likes that. There's nobody that doesn't like that I've ever
Yeah,
met.
yeah, yeah. I mean, just anywhere in these states. Oh, you're from Texas, and just spout off. Is everything really is bigger there, huh? Or eat whatever else. I mean,
Yep.
they eat it up, or just a misconception like that. Yeah, absolutely, man. You had mentioned having this content out for your daughter as she gets older, man. Like that'll be quite the legacy. Is that really kind of where the cultured bumpkin is that the main purpose and soul of it, or is it also to create a community?
Well, I love the community that I like is you know, people that appreciate literature. And I do a little bit of everything from early classical literature all the way up through the, 20th century. And so I love meeting other people. I recently did Pride and Prejudice in a Southern accent. I read the whole thing on live, and what I'm doing now is pulling the audio, and I'm going to make an audio book out of it. So then it's there's no interaction and there's no mistakes or whatever. But um, but I have done the work. So I just hit record, and then I recorded the whole thing over several sessions, and I've met people from all over the world, and most of them just from that one sort of project, and a lot of them were I've had people from Great Britain that were like, I saw the like the title and I was prepared to be outraged. And then when I clicked on it, I see that no, you love this. And this is a sincere project. And I'm in love with you. I love this. This is
Mm.
wonderful. And that kind of thing. I like that. And I've had a lot of, Jane Austen Society of I think, Great Britain or the over in the UK and then USA and stuff come in and say, I didn't know this was a thing, but I'm glad this is great. And I just love making those kind of connections because I think great writing isn't tied to an accent. And a lot of times that accent can bring you together with somebody that maybe you wouldn't have sort of met, but because um, let's say you're doing Hamlet in Southern, or like the actor Andrew Scott did a version of Hamlet in his Irish accent, and it's different. It's almost more relatable in that local accent of wherever you're from or whatever. And so yeah, community building, but also the fact that I am from the swamp, the Mississippi swamp with the Tupelo gums out there in the back. It's like I'm from a swamp, a literal swamp. And and yet I love Shakespeare. I love Christopher Marlowe, Emily Dickinson, you know, love Edgar Allan Poe, Longfellow. And um I think it would be a disservice for anyone to think that, well, I'm from the woods, so I really probably shouldn't mess with Shakespeare. You know what I mean? Whereas in Shakespeare, and it doesn't matter where you're from, if you're from the Far East or Middle East or back this way, there's a Shakespeare character in one of his plays that's going through what you're going through right now,
Absolutely.
or has been through something that you have been through, etc. It's so good writing is just relatable and stands the test of time.
I like using or referencing to Shakespeare, and bands that I enjoy listening to have done it well also, like Semisonic. A lot of people know them by Closing Time, but they had a great song. Um, I can hear you singing in my sleep. And toward the end of the song, he makes a reference to the Capulet. I'm singing up to a Capulet. It's a reference in my mind, and he's throwing it back to Shakespeare.
Yeah, I love that. Anytime I hear um a line like a classic line in a piece of art, a song, a title, or whatever, immediately it's almost like a dog whistle for culture vultures. Like, oh, I like this guy. I
Hmm.
like this gal. You know,
Yeah,
she's a reader or whatever. I think that's great. I love that.
dude. The first episode of Porch Talk was called "To Be or Not to Be,"
Nice.
and it was like I opened up with. I had just watched The Disaster Artist, and so I was doing my Tommy Wiseau, and you remember The Room?
No.
It's a movie so bad it's a cult classic now.
Oh, nice.
And so like he's not an attractive guy and he can't particularly act. The only thing about Tommy is that he has a lot of money, and also he lied about his origin. Nobody knows where he's from. Nobody knows about where he gets his money from. But all he wants to do is act. And he's in these acting classes and he's doing Shakespeare and all this, but his accent is so horrible that you hate it but love it at the same time. You know, it's almost like what you were saying earlier, like reading Shakespeare in a Southern accent.
Right.
And when people would ask where he's from, I'm from New Orleans. And it's like, no, you're not. No, you're not. But yeah, the Disaster Artist, that was James Franco. Him and his brother remade The Room and
Okay.
to
Okay.
pay homage, and it's a good film. But yeah, I decided I was like, I'm gonna give it my Tommy Wazoo's finest and just go balls to the wall.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man. Uh, and that, I mean, but like you said, I mean, I'm all for that, those cultural things, and like, I mean, the older I get, I used to be in the sports. I'll still go to a sporting event and the camaraderie of it, but like, I didn't even watch last night's Super Bowl. I didn't care anything about it. I spent my time uh, fiddling around on a guitar or writing a little bit. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I just I wasn't for me.
Yeah. I'm kind of the same. I used to be really big into sports, but same, the older I get, the more loved ones I lose, it's kind of like, that's a freaking game, you know? I mean,
Hmm.
good if you can make a living at it, good for you. But I'm too busy to sit there and sort of live vicariously through your exploits on the field. Even if I do, and I did watch the game and I enjoyed it. It was a good game, but it wasn't like I wasn't bothered by the outcome. It's kind of like, no, Chiefs won. All right, whatever.
Yeah, it's always insane to see those compilation videos of the aftermath of those big games like that. Someone has done broke their TV, or now there's fighting amongst friends, and I was like, I, what are we doing, Bubba? You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, that's too important to you if you're doing that kind of thing when it doesn't go right.
Hmm. Yeah, dude, I'm just not in that. And like you said, man, it's more uh the more loved ones that I lose, it's like the more that I'm just trying to hold on to what I got and cherish that.
Yep.
Try to figure out ways to honor it. And I do enjoy like watching people from the University of Alabama or Mississippi State or people that I did get a chance to see here live. I mean, I still remember them seeing in Davis Wade or at Bryant Denny, and it's good to see them on the big stage, but
Yeah,
it's it's just a game.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah. Well, dude, what else? We've talked a little bit about your acting. I mean, like, is that something you said you don't want to shave again, but are you still enjoy it?
I love acting, and I think, and that's kind of a joke. If I had to shave, I would. But it's kind of like I have to have a pretty good reason. And my reason for this is this play is set in the late 50s, and the guys were either shaved or with a mustache, and I think I look stupid with just a mustache. So
Fair
um,
enough.
I look stupid shaved now. Anyway, uh, great face for radio. I'm in a good line of work. The But I really like it. I think that community theater, like I'm doing over in Starkville, is it's a great way of developing confidence and things like that, but also your voice, the inflections in your voice and things like that. And I think in some stage plays in the past, I've played these cartoon characters in comedies. Well, these in this one, it's much more like this is a sincere character. And so to me, that's harder. It's harder to be sincere and good at acting than instead of like now I think The Three Stooges is brilliant comedy. Some people might laugh, but like that, those guys, they were good at physical comedy. Everything they did was thought through, and it looks like they're just up there messing around. But those guys were very smart. And if you hear them talk about it, especially Mo later in life, Mo Howard, um, some of the stuff he would talk about setting up jokes, it's really good. Um, but it's good to in as a voice actor to sort of take your voice through the paces every so often. It's like, you put a new whatever on your truck, and so you take it out on the highway and open her up, and let's see, did I put it in right? Is anything rattling? Does it sound good? All right, good deal.
Hmm.
And I think stage acting is kind of like that. It kind of gives you a chance to sort of push the boundaries on where your voice normally is, because I do a lot of commercials, right? And so a lot of times my voice is right in here. maybe up about here. Maybe I'm projecting just a little bit. Maybe sometimes I'm back here a little bit, but it's generally in a band, right?
Hmm.
Whereas you get in a stage play, you can start pushing. All right, let's inflect really high, way up here. Let's get up here where I would never be in a commercial, and then down here, and it could be to comedic effect, or it could be because that's what the script kind of calls for, and whatever the character is going through is reaction. And so I love stage acting, and I think it's a great little it's like a it's like a little workout, a little practice reps for your voice.
I've been in three plays, counting the one that we didn't get to perform, the one I was telling you about at the beginning, and it's fun to walk the skin of another human being, and it's
Yeah.
also like each play that I've been in, I got to do an accent. Like
Okay.
one time I had like a Midwest Chicago, or then there was one time where it was a little more Irish, and it was kind of like the movie Snatch with Brad Pitt. So I kind of
Uh-huh.
took it like that gypsy,
Okay.
like what about a
Right.
caravan with no wheels,
Right. Right.
or and like just having fun with that, and then like it's you're rehearsing that in your bedroom, and then you get someone to come read script with you, and like they're here, and they're like, "Whoa, dude, like you're really in there," and I was like, "Man,
Yeah.
so it ain't Alan right now, dude. I'm this guy."
Yeah. That's I'm kind of naturally introverted. I would say I'm a highly functioning introvert, right? My
Yeah,
default is to kind of, you know, just kind of sit there and read, or
yeah.
you know what I mean? I'm not
Observe.
really I like people. I like talking to people, but generally they're going to be the one to introduce themselves. I don't know. That's just kind of how I am, a little on the introverted side. But with stage acting, it that really helps me because it's like I can say, oh, I can sort of open up because it's not even me. You still don't know me. You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
can I can be outgoing and yet it's another guy that's outgoing. It's not Jake. And that's kind of how I got into it. And
yeah,
I think I've matured. I think I'm less introverted now than I used to be, but also I like acting for that reason because you get to get in somebody else's shoes.
yeah. I think that'll be the next thing. Like what go back out to community theater. I want to do. I've done serious. I want to do a. I think I want to do a comedy.
But I,
I don't know if I've done a comedy yet. Most of the things that I've done has been fairly serious. Or if, well, I take that back. The last one that I was in, it was a comedy, but I was a serious character,
okay, you're
which
kind of a
was,
set man,
yeah, yeah,
which is an
yeah,
important part.
yeah. I
That's
mean,
that's
everything falls apart without that guy, but at
yep,
the same time, it's like everyone else is having fun while you're just kind of, you're the guy that's uptight.
right. That's funny. One of my favorites. I'm a classic, almost anything kind of guy. One of the great comedy duos, to me was Abbott and Costello, and Abbott was the set man a lot of most of the time, just kind of, or always, I think. Um, he was the serious guy that didn't, you weren't laughing at him. You were laughing at the situation he put Costello in. And then when he's falling and smashing tables and all that, that's when the laughter comes. But none of that works without Abbott, like setting the volleyball for your spike. You know what I mean, it's so
Yeah.
important to have both.
Yeah, I think like I'm a huge comedy fan, and I've seen it begin to work that way with comedy podcast.
Hmm.
And then when those guys go to do stand up, like I think like these guys are genuinely funny with their friends because, like you just said, one of them can set up the spike, so to speak. They can
Right.
set the joke up. But when you're up on stage by yourself, a lot of times it's lackluster or it's not what you heard on the podcast. And
Right.
so like that's always a very interesting dynamic because it's so different.
Hmm. I think comedy is something that's so fascinating to me. Like the ability to make somebody laugh, one is powerful. That's like a superpower. I think when you laugh, your heart opens up. So I mean, you can, if you're a politician, one of the greatest things you could do is be funny.
Yeah,
You're trying
charisma.
to, exactly. And I know many a time somebody will say something that if they would have said, "Hey," and just said it with a straight face, sort of assertively, I would have flat rejected it and said, get out of here. I'm not interested. And yet, but you came to me and made me laugh, and now I want to hear a little more. And maybe it's just, well, I disagree, but okay, I see where you're coming from on that. That's funny.
Hmm.
And I just think comedy's so it's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I think the same rule still applies, man. I go back to the court jester and like
Mhm.
what was his job in the king's court? Well, he was the only one that could bring a critique to the king without getting his head chopped off. Why?
Yep.
Because he would make the king laugh.
Yep.
And it was about the calamity of what's going on in the kingdom, but he was the only one that could convey it to where there was humor.
That's right. That's
So
right.
very much needed. And I think like those are like our comedians, and there are other people when it comes to the arts, like sports. Yeah, very important when it comes to the culture of a country or a nation. But like your comedians, I consider to be the gatekeeper, uh, overall culture as far as like setting the tone of even what language is okay.
Right.
It's very interesting
Definitely. I
because I
read a
mean
book.
we're seeing that play out like with the Shane Gillis story with SNL. He was fired from the cast after they dug through his podcast and found out some jokes that he made. And now at the end of this month, he's hosting it. And so it's come back full circle. And
How
so
about that?
it's been, and this has been going on for over a year and a half. And it was just announced at the beginning of this month that he would host. And I've been just following his story, and it would have been so easy for him to play the victim and just, oh, woe is me. But no, he rallied.
That's awesome.
And now instead of being a cast member, he's gonna host an episode.
How about that? I was not aware of that. That's really cool.
Yeah. So props to that, but I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, I was just mentioning I recently read a book by a fellow named George Clare. He changed his name because he was a Jewish Austrian before World War II. And Austria was, of course, a big German country.
Mhm.
So his name was Klar. I mean, just as German as he could be, but because he was a Jew, they didn't, they're like, y'all got to get out of here. And well, the people that were perceptive and were kind of reading the culture got out of there way before kind of things really kicked off with World War II. But in his case, he said one of the things that made him say, we got to get out of here is there was a comedian that made some jokes about the Jewish Nuremberg law or the Nuremberg laws. And the comedian was a Jewish guy. And he made some jokes about the Nuremberg laws, which of course were like, you can't marry a Jewish person or you can't be a business partner, those kind of things. And he said that he went to a comedy show one night and everybody was laughing. The comic was killing it. And then he read in the paper like the next day or two that that guy had been arrested for
Mm.
like crimes against sort of like suspected espionage, that kind of nonsense. But it's just somebody that has it out for you and they just roll you up. That's what corrupt governments do. And he said he read that in the paper and he was like, "Oh, I know he's not a spy. I bet you he's funny." And that's not good. So that's and this was like early 30s almost or mid 30s anyway. And that's kind of when he started trying to get out
Seeing
of
the
there,
writing on the wall.
which is a good thing because he might not have made it out. But yeah, to your point that comedy is kind of it gives you a pulse of where the culture's at. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? It's one of the vital signs of how how healthy a culture is.
Absolutely, man. And it's been crazy, like just over the past 10 years, or I'm 33. And maybe I'm just beginning to get old enough to get a grasp on it and just kind of see it, and maybe I can better understand it. But it just seems to me like, man, the past 10 years has been such a whirlwind when it comes to American or even Western culture. Like we're kind of in an identity crisis of uh, who we are as a people.
I think that's right. I look at some shows that were real big when I was in college. I'm a little older than you. When I was in college, Chappelle's show was kicking off
Hmm.
and The Office was kicking off. Now, obviously, Chappelle's Show was much more of a line pusher even back then than The Office was. But I don't know if you could make either one of those now without people just being outraged by it.
Absolutely. I mean, to quote Dave Chappelle on his own show, I think he was they were talking about Rick James maybe. He was a habitual line stepper.
Exactly. Yeah, Charlie Murphy was
Yeah.
talking habitual line stepper.
Yeah, that's
That's
it.
such a good line.
Yeah. He
That I
said,
mean,
"You
that is
slapped me and my forehead said unity."
that those and when he would uh Dave Chappelle would play the in whiteface with the giant blonde wig, Chuck
Oh
Connors,
yeah.
the newscaster. That was so good. Oh man, that was what a great show.
Yeah. Yeah, those
And I really
uh
like that about him is that he does not sort of censor his comedy or cater to people that are easily offended. He's kind of, I'm going to have a little something to make everybody mad. And then, he says things that I don't agree with or whatever, whether it's political or, morally, whatever. And yet he
mhm.
makes you laugh. And so, you're like, okay, well, yeah, I can, that's your way of looking at it. That's great. Let's get along either way.
Absolutely. And I can see his point. I mean, I just watched this latest stand-up and he had had a lot going on. And I remember he had Chris Rock on tour with him who had just been slapped by Will Smith at the Grammys. And he had a guy rush him on stage with what he thought was a gun, turned out to be a knife. And the first thing that the joke that he was about to make, Chris Rock rushes off from backstage and is like, "Was that Will Smith?" And I was like, "You made the perfect joke."
Right.
And so like, yeah, man, and those things are perfect when you can not only like make fun of yourself, but like also like what a cultural moment of something that we had never seen.
Right. And
Uh,
I think humor anytime is a good thing, but humor in the midst of a bad situation is to me the purest humor, if there be such a thing. Or maybe there's something from a um, uh, like you use your own hardship to make somebody else laugh, and you're okay with that. To me, that takes such courage. And when I was in Iraq, I was a young Army officer. I was in Iraq, and I was in this the talk, a tactical operations center. This one for a couple of the months I was there, and there was one day like the band Five Finger Death Punch came in there. It's like I was like walking, doing something, and all the guys came in the room, and they were just super cool. And I loved all those USO tour guys. Toby Keith, who just passed, he was
mhm,
great. He was Kelly Pickler, man. Her poster was on every USO place I ever went to over there. Some of those folks, I just really appreciate that. But these guys, they had a program where they would, if you had lost like a limb or had some sort of catastrophic injury, they brought them back in. This was '09 and you could go on a patrol. Like the Army would send out a patrol and you could go to the spot where you lost your limb or got blown up in some way or what lost a friend, whatever, were maimed and get out and everybody pulls security while you sit there and you just deal with it as long as you need to. And when
mm.
you're ready to go, everybody packs up and you go. And I mean, like, that's wonderful. I think that's great. So these guys were there. There was a group of about 10 wounded warriors, and there was different kinds. Some guys you could tell by looking at them. One guy was like no hair and pink. Like they were all in uniform, but I mean, just you could tell it was scar tissue. He didn't have eyebrows. He didn't have any hair on his face. And didn't even have a full nose. Like you could, all the gristle had been scorched, and yet he was like, guys, man, I've been through some stuff, and I think I'm doing fine. If y'all just remember, if you're going through something, you're gonna make it out the other side. And to me, well, that's heavy in a good way. That's good. Thank you. Well, so this other guy came in, and there's several. Some guys are clearly, have a prosthetic leg or whatever. Well, this one guy came in, and I thought he was one of the chaperones or whatever, one of the guards, kind of uh running around with him. He had his hands behind his back, and he was like some kind of a E7, platoon sergeant, first sergeant, whatever, and sergeant first class. And he said, um, he was just stood in the corner for a little bit, as there people coming in, everybody, officers would come up, hey, it's good to have you guys. Can we get you anything? And so he's standing there in the corner, and he says, hey, he leans over to me and says, hey, you want to see something funny? And I was like, well, sure, thank you, sure, I'm down for something funny. And he goes, from his in the military, you call it parade rest when you have your hands behind you. He said, "Hey, private," and he talked to a younger enlisted fella. Would you mind getting me a bottle of water over there? And because it was hot, it's Iraq. There's like a pallet of water inside the door of every building you go in. And he said, oh yes, oh, absolutely, Sergeant. He ran over there, grabbed the bottle, and came back and handed it to him. And this guy went like this. You son of a bitch. Can't you see I don't have any arms? Can you open it for me? He did that with a straight face. And then when I looked, he did not have any arms. His sleeves were pinned behind him.
Whoa.
And then he just looked at the kid like, and then the kid was mortified. He was like, oh, sorry. And the guy burst out in the most raucous laughter I've ever heard. It was like, I gotcha. Ha ha. But seriously, could you open it for me?
Yeah, I do. I do. And like,
I mean, like that.
would you mind holding it up for me? We get under it.
I mean, like to me, it's like, wow, that is you're a brave man. That's good.
Yeah, dude, it's always good to have those people. I mean, even like, I work in with electricity, Monday through Friday, and every now and then we have to go through these safety videos, or we'll have someone come talk to us about safety or whatever else. And I mean, sometimes we'll have someone who has lost appendages or lost both arms, or they got arc flash to where, like you were describing the face earlier.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, an arc flash is it's 10 times hotter than the sun. Uh, and it's usually if you get arc flash, I mean, it's right on you.
Right.
So it just eats you alive. I mean, that's how that guy lost both arms. Like that arc flash just deteriorated it. And so like we're always happy go lucky, and thank God when we have these guys come in and speak with us that have had these god awful accidents. It was like, if you don't look like this, don't wear your PPE.
Yeah.
And then they'll go through and tell their story, and it's like, man, how easy is it for me to just go about my day to day and not feel like putting my PPE on
Yeah.
and just I've done this 1,000 times, but dude, it could be the 1,001 time. And electricity is that it's that current in the river that you don't see that'll pull you under.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's that snake in the brush. It's always there. It's waiting, and it'll strike you at any moment if you let your guard down. And so it's like anytime always try to be mindful of that. But like having people that have had like these awful accidents or however it happened to them to be able to make a good joke, that's great.
That is great.
Cause
There's,
it would be so easy to be, oh, woe is me, and just
yep.
feel sorry for yourself. Man, props to that guy for
Yep.
having a good time with it at least.
I know. And I mean, to me, that's just, I'm like, man, if anything happens to me like that, if anything's were to happen, I hope that I would sort of navigate whatever trauma comes along with it like he did, because that's impressive. That's a real a strong man. Anybody, if you can do that, if you can laugh about something awful, that's a strength there that I may or may not have.
All right. Oh, well, Jake, man, I've really enjoyed this time. I've got about three more questions and we'll wrap this up, brother. I mean,
All right.
I'd love to have you on again in person next time or however we can do it.
Yeah, let's do
I
it.
really do appreciate your time. Question one, man. Would you please plug the socials? I saw that you have a shop too. See, you got a good hat there. Uh,
Yeah, that's right.
tell us about like how people can connect with what you got going on.
Okay, yeah. So I'm on YouTube as the Culture Bumpkin, along with TikTok, pretty active over there. and on my podcast. Wherever you get your podcast, you could find the Cultured Bumpkin.
I
Um,
do highly recommend it, dude. Like I spend a lot of time in a work truck riding around, and I have spent quite a bit of time with you, and I appreciate it.
well, thank you. I
It's
appreciate that.
it's
That always means a lot to me when somebody,
it,
you know, says
it's a
that.
good hang, and it's fresh, man. I spend a lot of time like listening to comedy podcasts, or sometimes it's news and politics, and like Culture Bumpkin it's a good break, and it's something that I thoroughly enjoy, and I think you do a great job, and I'm
Thank
glad you do it.
Thank you, Alan. That means a lot to me.
Yeah, man. Any other plugs for that? Just YouTube,
Uh,
Instagram,
yeah,
TikTok.
that's the TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, or I should say, podcast, YouTube, TikTok is the Cultured Bumpkin. I am on Instagram as Jake Phillips 116, but that's a little more as far as that's more my personal stuff. I do family pictures and whatnot. That's not all classic literature.
Right on. Tell me a little bit about the future. Have you got anything, a new series or a new idea you've been crafting? Is there anything new going on with Culture Bumpkin that you care to share?
Well, yeah, this past year, I read Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, who is one of my favorite authors. That's not just like, oh, I'll find something people like. I have in the army that sort of took me out of Iraq and swept me off to a faraway place where people were nice or polite, even if they're talking crap to your face. And it was just totally different. And I loved that. It just helped me escape. And so I love Jane Austen for that. So I did that. Right now I'm reading Treasure Island in Southern by Robert Louis Stevenson. So that's what I'm going to be doing this year, going live almost every day, and then turn it into an audiobook when I'm all done. Great way of connecting with people and stuff. And I do live poetry readings at night as well. Kind of keeping that up. I've got some off-site stuff. I'm going up to Chicago to record an audio drama here in a couple weeks, so I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, just more of the same, really.
Very cool, man. Last question to walk out of the door. What was your favorite part of this conversation?
Man, you're a good interviewer. You have a lot of questions prepared, and I suppose, I mean, I didn't. I know we've talked some, but I didn't realize that like you have actually kind of dug into my podcast and listened. And to me, you're an artistic guy. You're busy. You've got your own podcast, and yet you've taken the time to spend with me, unbeknownst, just with my content, and that means a whole lot to me. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, man, dude. I'm just man, I'm happy that you're doing what you're doing, like with Shannon and everyone else in our community that is uh being creative, podcasting or whatever kind of show or whatever they're doing. I want to support it. And
Well, I appreciate that.
let's lock arms and what is it? The tide that raises all ships. Let's all come up together.
That's right. I'd like to have you on my podcast too, and just talk about your songwriting process, your creativity, just whatever. I think I would
Yeah.
love. I'm not musically inclined, but I would love to get in your mind a little bit and hear about what makes you tick and the
Yeah, man.
creativity side of that.
I'd love to do it. I think you'd enjoy it because it all starts as poetry for me.
Right. That's right. That's right. For sure.
And then here comes the melody, and then I'll pick up an instrument and begin to, but I we'll get in all that on yours.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Jake, man, thank you so much for your time. We'll close out right here, buddy.
That sounds good. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.